few weeks ago I published a video called How to Practice Jazz Guitar, where I'm talking about the fact that there are different stages in learning a new skill and how you take that into account when you're trying to make a practice routine so that you keep working towards your goals in an efficient way. One of the most frequent questions on that video, but also on other videos, was what do you need to play jazz guitar? So, of course, jazz is a really diverse genre, so there's not going to be like one skill set that's going to fit so that you can play everything from Dixieland to neo-soul. But at the same time, there is sort of a common language, and there are of course things that you probably want to check out. So if we narrow it down a bit, then we can start talking about this. And in this video I'm going to try to take certain aspects of it and come up with sort of a list of requirements and stuff that you want to work on if you're trying to learn how to play jazz guitar. So what I'm going to discuss is what do you need to play a jazz piece. And since the biggest part of the jazz repertoire either are jazz standards or songs that are very similar to jazz standards, then that's what I'm going to sort of refer everything to. I'm going to try to make it into some sort of list of different items that you need to be aware of and you need to be working on if you want to play jazz standards. And one reason why I want to do this is also because jazz is a genre where there's a lot of information and a lot of difficult words and harmony with extensions and stuff like that. But actually, if we look at it and if we maybe just demystify it just a little bit, then maybe it's not so complicated. Maybe you don't need to check out all those things to get started, and you can actually start working with a few things and then get really far and play a lot of songs. So I'm going to try to make a list that's very specific, and it's only going to have a few things on it because actually you don't need that many things to play jazz. I am going to leave out one fairly important thing, because I'm not going to talk about how you learn the jazz language. Jazz has a tradition and has a melodic language, but the thing is that it's not really well defined, and again it's something that's going to vary a lot from subgenre to subgenre. And also I think maybe it's something I can talk about in another video, so if you want me to make a video on that, you can just leave a comment on this video and then I can maybe take that up another time. So what does a typical performance of a jazz piece consist of? I think we pretty much have three elements. We have melody, harmony and improvisation. So if we sort of take that to the jam session performance of a jazz standard, then that's going to be somebody playing the melody, so the theme, and somebody comping that, and then after that you have solos, which is improvisation, and there are people playing harmony behind that. And what do you need? So you need to be able to play the melody. I think the melody is the most important part of knowing a jazz song. So if you are able to play a jazz piece, you're able to play the melody. It's not enough to just know the chords, and mostly because it's about being flexible, and I've talked about this before, but the melody gives you a set of options for chords, and if you only know the chords and don't know the melody, then you don't have the freedom to sort of negotiate all the other chords that you might run into when playing with other people. So that's one thing. So you need to be able to play the melody, and you can learn that by ear, you can learn that by reading tabs or reading standard notation. So you need to somehow be able to do one of those things. The next thing is harmony. So you have to be able to play the chords, you have to be able to read chord symbols and sort of translate that into chord voicings. Finally, we have improvisation. So improvisation probably gets the most attention in jazz, and I think a typical performance of a jazz song is going to be 10% theme and 90% of people soloing over the course of the theme. So the first thing you need to figure out is you need to figure out what are the notes that go with each of the chords of the song. And usually this is achieved by analysis. So you need some theory so that you can understand what the different chords are and how to put some scales or arpeggios to them, and usually it's also a very good idea to be able to play the arpeggios of all the chords in the song. If you want to see how I analyze songs, I've made a few videos where I'm analyzing some standards, and I'll link to them here so you can check them out if you want to dig into that. So to cover these three things, we now have the following list. We need to be able to learn and play a melody, we need some chord voicings, we need some scales and some arpeggios to play and improvise over the chords, and we need some theory to sort of tie it all together and figure out what goes where. To make the list a little bit more specific, I'm going to make a few observations about this type of repertoire. The first observation is that most of these songs are tonal, so they're in a key and they don't really contain any symmetrical or atonal sounds. And that means that you can really focus on your major scales, and then you can add your harmonic minor and your melodic minor, and then you'll be just fine. And until you have some freedom in improvising and working with that, then you don't really need to worry about playing diminished and whole tone and augmented scales and stuff like that, so you can just leave that be. Another observation that's useful, especially for beginners, is that if you know your major scale and all the diatonic chords in there, and you know how to play a dominant seventh that resolves to a minor chord with harmonic minor, then you can actually cover a very big part of the repertoire already, and you can start building a repertoire of your own and learning songs, and you can expand from there, so you don't have to play a lot of scales before you start working on music. In that way we have a reduced, more specific list of goals that you can work towards. The first thing is you want to work on your major scales. You want to know them in all positions and in all keys. And you also want to know the note names, and you also want to know the diatonic arpeggios, and you want to know the notes in the diatonic arpeggios. For me personally, I find that it's easier to work on the arpeggios within the scales, so I don't have separate fingerings for my arpeggios very often. I really just tend to think of them as a scale exercise, and that way I don't have to connect different fingerings, and I find that just sort of easier because the arpeggio is already in the context where I need to make melodies with them. If you want to see more about how I work on that, you can check out some of the videos I have on how to practice scales. As soon as you have worked a bit on your major scales and you start getting used to that, you need to add your harmonic minor and later also your melodic minor scales. In terms of chords, well, you need to think of the chords as being in a key, because you're playing songs that are in a key, so it makes more sense to practice them like that. So I would suggest that you work on playing diatonic chords of the major scale, but also of the harmonic minor and the melodic minor scale. And really you only need 5 types of chords to sort of get started in playing jazz standards, because you only need to be able to play a major 7, a minor 7, a dominant 7 and a minor 7 flat 5, and then a diminished chord, and then you can play pretty much everything that's there. So the best way to practice them is really to practice them in sort of diatonic progression, so just through a scale, or maybe practice them in common progressions like 2-5-1s or 1-6-2-5s. In terms of theory, the first thing you want to focus on is just having a really solid basic understanding of the key and knowledge of the scale and the notes, the diatonic chords, and that you're used to thinking of them as a group of notes. This already is happening if you're practicing your scales and thinking about the notes and practicing the diatonic arpeggios. And it's also going to come if you're just playing songs and being aware of the fact that they're in a key. And for the rest, that's going to help you once you get to chords that are not strictly diatonic, so stuff that's not really modulating, but you will still find them in standards very often, like 4 minor chords or auxiliary dominant. If you look at it like this, I think the list is a little bit easier to oversee, and maybe it's not so overwhelming, there's not so much information, and I think jazz is often becoming too complicated, and especially when we're explaining it, and we have to talk about all the alterations and extensions and all that stuff, and maybe you don't really need that so much in the beginning. You just need to sort of cover the basics and really just play some songs and start working on some basic skills next to playing some music. I think there's an interesting discussion to have. Of course, the way I sort of map this out right now, I'm not talking about how you can know your scales, but that doesn't mean you're good at playing great solos with them. That's a little bit something about learning language and learning how to create melodies and come up with melodies and steal other people's melodies. And that's gonna be for another video. If you guys want one, just let me know. I'll try to think about how to make a video like that. That's a little bit tricky actually, but that could be fun to try and make. I think this is a fun discussion anyway, so what do you guys think? Did I miss something? Or is there something that you don't agree with at all? Let me know in the comments, and then hopefully we can have a discussion on it like that. So thank you for watching, and until next time.